Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Necessity versus Commodity. I've got an amazing person, an even better friend as a guest today, Amir Muradali. Now, a little bit of background on him and why I have him on, because he is actually coaching individuals to actually take control of their careers, find their dream jobs, but more importantly, navigate that the rest of their life as long as they're working. His background, he's actually got 2 master's degree, engineering, also consulting, 17 years of experience. Now, the thing that Amir has done amazingly during that time is he started off as an engineer, making like 60,000 a year, which is good, but he was very quickly able to scale up his career and start landing roles that were paying him 250,000 plus a year. He did not do that the traditional way of submitting resumes, going to interviews. He actually has a unique ability. Now he coaches this to people. It's his passion of how to circumvent that, and to even to a point which happened to him multiple times, which happened to a lot of his clients as well, that meets a leader they're not even hiring, but that individual, like he was able to present himself, that high level executive said, I need you in my company. I'm making you a role. And so he's got a unique ability of helping people, coaching them to either find their next job, even if you've been out of work for 6 months. You've been applying to jobs, you're getting nothing. So welcome, Amir, to the podcast. Amazing to have you. Super excited. We've been
Thank you.
friends for a while. We've been in masterminds together. We've known each other, which is just so awesome to finally have you on. So
Thank
I
you.
guess I want to start with, I watched an interview you did with a high level executive. His name's Paul, right? He's actually owned his own companies and he's done fabulous in his career. All of a sudden, he can't find a job anywhere. And listening to him talk about when he met you and what you teach, and I'm going to try to sum it up really easy. The easiest way of during that interview, he was expressing, hey, everybody now that's trying to find a job is using a tape recorder instead of using like the high definition phones and technology we have now. And that's why he started working with you, going, oh my gosh, this is actually it. And I wish more companies knew about this, and more importantly, a lot of employees, because it would save us a lot of time in the hiring process. And he brought up fear. So tell us a little bit about what you do and your passion and how you got here, but besides everything I just laid out on the table.
Oh my God. Well, Scott, first of all, you explained a lot of what I do really well. I was like, well, we can just end it right here. You just described it all. No, but honestly, I'll talk about that. But first, I do have to say that I love the name of your podcast, Necessity
Thank you.
versus Commodity.
Thank you.
Because if there's anything that I do, that pretty much underlines that.
Agree.
Because essentially what it is, what I do is I help professionals, really amazing, smart, accomplished professionals who sort of hit a ceiling in their career. They've done really well. They've progressed up, in the corporate ladder. They've progressed up in their careers, but all of a sudden, they hit a ceiling. They can't get a job. They can't move up ahead, and what have you. And so that's where they find me, and this is what I do, and I help them crack through that barrier, crack through that ceiling, and pretty much go wherever it is that they want from there. And whether that is getting moving up the leadership ranks, moving or just getting a job in a different company or whatever, right? Like career change. And so that's essentially what I do is I help these folks. But the way I do it, and you described it perfectly, is not the old tape recorder way, right? It's not the it's not the VHS way. It's really the brand new. I want to call it the brand new, but it's literally it's not what people do mostly out there, but it's the high definition, high tech way of doing this. And really,
Can we
it's
stop there for 1 second?
sure,
Just to get a little clarity on that,
yeah,
the tape recorder aspect and going the high def way.
yeah,
Sending out 1,000 resumes isn't going to get you a job. I think everybody knows that.
yeah,
That's a tape recorder way, but still everybody does it, right?
yes, yeah,
Even networking. Like some people are like, oh, you help me network? No, you do way more than that. Because
yeah,
networking doesn't even get you these type of
no,
things. You can go network and get some names, shake some hands, send some DMs,
yeah.
but that's networking. That doesn't get you where you're at. So the high definition aspect of it, of like what you do, like it's so important. And I see it in the online space. I see it in corporate America that you help with, and even more so in corporate America, because most people don't have any sort of skill set when it comes down to the electronical way and the high def way.
Yeah.
So what is different from the networking and like the resume stuff of like what you do?
Um, what it really comes down to is how do you connect with leaders, and how do you communicate your value with them so that they see you as somebody that they can trust in this important role, so that they see that you are somebody that they want to bring in, and quite honestly, that they see a future with you in it, right?
Mm,
They see you as a solution to their problems. They see you as a pathway to their success. They see as integral to their success. So it's like, how do you get them to do that? Now, having said that, you don't have to be somebody who walks in saying, I know exactly what your pain points are. Right. This is one of the biggest bones that I have to pick with career coaches out there and career counselors, anyone who's teaching anything career related. It's like, oh, just go and talk about the pain points. No leader who has to live with those pain points every day is going to walk into a room with a stranger and say, have a conversation about my pain points. Like, I'm not going to do that, right? I am the one who has to go and start. Like, I have to work through those pain points. Like, who are you? Like, why would I talk about that with you? But so it's not about talking what those pain points are, like addressing those pain points in those conversations, but it's helping them see that, what, I can see you as somebody who's going to alleviate my pain. And so that's the difference between just doing it the old way and versus the way I teach it. Now, the old way is like, so if you're talking applications, submitting applications, resumes, and what have you, quite honestly, that's the easiest way. Everyone wants to do that. That's the low stress way, and quite great. If
well,
people
it's
under
low stress for the action, but it's high stress for the result because you're not getting any. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
it's a trade off, right?
yeah.
Like you're
Agreed.
trading stress one way or the other. But even when you're networking or when you're going out for information interviewing, like what are people doing, right? It's like, hey, yeah, I'd love to ask you about your job. I'd love to ask you about the company. I'd love to talk. It's really showing fake interest, and asking for time and asking for advice. It's walking in with an ask,
Yeah.
right? And for somebody who is really busy, who's busy in their role, busy in their job, like that feels like it feels like an imposition. It feels like that doesn't feel good. Let's just put it that way, right? And so a lot of leaders, a lot of people really struggle with giving people time, with those information interviews. And so it doesn't go anywhere. It feels awkward on the person who's doing it, and feels awkward for the person who's being asked to do it, right? And so that obviously doesn't go anywhere. And I've talked to so many professionals who come back and say, I've networked, but those conversations don't go anywhere. When the way I teach people how to do it, when I'm working with my clients and we do this, I don't call it networking, I call it campaigning, right? It's campaigning to create opportunity. But the way I do it, or in the way I teach my clients to do it, um, referrals are automatic. It's immediate. Like when you're speaking with someone, that conversation becomes the highlight of their day, if not their week, and if not their month, right?
Wow.
It becomes a
Yeah.
highlight. It's like, I remember that was an amazing conversation. I wanted, you know what? You should speak to my boss. You should speak to this person. You should speak. They're immediately connecting you with people. And so it's interesting. I have a client right now who when he joined, one of the reasons when he joined is he worked with a job search coach, and the job search coach told him, just network. And he went out and he was having conversations, like it didn't go anywhere. And now he's campaigning, and I just actually got off the phone with him, and he has it's like one conversation. He had one conversation, and it's led to him having 7 conversations so far, immediately connecting with people, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's amazing.
When you were kind of just describing some of that, like my marketing side kicks in and my copyright side, and I just start playing videos in my head. That's how I just visually think sometimes. And you painted such an amazing picture, like a whole video right there.
Yeah.
And, you know, what was going through my head when you first started, I'm going, everything people are doing now, you're basically just in a stack of papers.
Right.
Like, how do you get the job you're looking for and the companies you're applying for? They can't even pick you out of the Lakers lineup right now, right? Like, it's good chance. It's why you're not getting any interviews, because they don't know anything. Now, you brought something up kind of interesting there. And what I thought about is like a high school athlete trying to get a college scholarship. They have all these videos out of them, just showing their highlight reel,
Right.
right? And
Right.
you need to do that in today's market. Not
Right.
having videos of like you out there slam dunking a basketball or throwing a 50-yard bomb or running an 80-yard touchdown. But essentially, it's kind of the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get this across to people so
Right.
they're like, oh my gosh, this is a 5-star recruit. This is a guy I need to talk to.
Right.
How do you do that properly? And that's where networking fails too. Just shaking hands. Oh, what do I do? Okay, I do this and that.
Yeah.
No, to really see you as, wow, this isn't just a number one free agent on the market.
Yeah.
We're actually going to make a spot on the team for this guy. And that's so important for people to really understand.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to underline here though is that you don't have to be a star, right? So using your analogy, a coach doesn't always look for the star person, the star athlete who is like an all-rounder, like just scores high on all the skills and attributes. Also is looking for somebody who's actually going to help the team be successful, right? And who's going to be an asset to the team in general, right? So yes, there is an attitude aspect of it, and there's a how do you fit in with the rest of the organization culture, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. It's does the coach or the hiring leader, do they see you as somebody that they can be successful, whatever that success is in their
Yeah.
mind, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, if you're trying to, there's a strategy. If you try to be the person who stands out in the stack of paper, what are you going to do to stand out in the stack of paper? You're going to go and get like umpteen Google, certifications and AI and what everyone does, right? What everyone's doing right now. You're going to get all those certifications. You're going to go and get an MBA. Maybe you get 2 or 3 MBAs. I don't know. I got somebody who I spoke with. They started a PhD program. And I'm like, okay. And like, why do you want to do a PhD program? Because I'll be more employable. I'm like, okay. Do you know how many PhDs I get calls from? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, university degrees are great. Hey, listen, I'm my best year. One of my best years of my life was going through my MBA program. So I'm all for education. School was like that's my stomping ground, right? I'm all for education, but if you're going to go ahead and get a degree just so that you are more employable out there, hate to say it, you just setting yourself up for a disappointment.
I think you bring up something really unique right there. Um, it's not technically of like, hey, you've got this much education, you've got this many certs, you've had this many years, you're this top level person. It's showing your value. And there's, as a business owner myself for a lot of years, going through interview process, it can take a lot of time just to begin with, which really sucks. And a lot of businesses hate that expense. Hiring the wrong individual can damage that company for 18 months to 5 years. So the fear of bringing the wrong person. And it actually makes me think about an interview that I watched. It was on a podcast. The gentleman was interviewing a former general manager for an NFL team, and they were discussing one of the years in the draft. And he was asking, okay, why? And I think it was like number 5 or number 7 they had in the draft or whatever, and said, why'd you pick this guy instead of this guy? And he goes, I get asked that all the time, because we could have taken this guy who we knew was an offensive superstar, was going to go drop 100 yards every single week. If he didn't, he was scoring a touchdown. Like, he was going to change the game on our offense.
Yeah.
But the problem was, he was the guy that would go out partying until 3 o'clock in the morning every Saturday.
Right.
He could still perform on Sunday, but he would probably take 6 to 10 individuals of our team out with him, and they would all tank, and we would be losing games because of those other 10 guys. we drafted this other guy because he was actually going to prevent those 6 to 10 guys to go out to the club, and he was going to uplift us, and we are going to win more games. And
Right.
that's showing it's not always the skill,
Yeah.
but what you bring to the team. And
Right.
does that hiring individual actually trust you?
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
how do you help people like show who they are so they gain trust from a hiring manager, a CEO, whoever it may be, to build that? Because that's something very unique that you help people with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And trust is at the core of it all. Just to be able to be able to be somebody that leaders can see as, I may not know you right now, but I know enough to know that I can trust you in those roles, right? And that is like trust element is everything. And it all going talking about that analogy, I want to touch on that before I tell you kind of like how I do this with folks. But the interview that you saw with me, the executive, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned,
Yep.
yeah,
With Paul.
that's essentially what he shared with me. If you remember, he said that bringing people at bringing the wrong people at the senior levels, because he was a CEO, he's been a CEO, CMO, COO, he's been at CEO level for a number of years, taking companies public, he sold a company. He's had his run of hiring senior level leaders. And so he said, yeah, like bringing the wrong people at that level, at the senior levels, I thought it was expensive. He's like, no, it's not expensive, disastrous. It's disastrous. It sets you back months, if not years. And so to your point, yeah, like you have to, and he's on the hook to his advisors, he's on the hook to this executive board, and his investors.
That's
If
his
he
job and reputation on the line too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
there's a lot riding on who he brings. So the way I help people come across as somebody that leaders can trust really comes down to, first and foremost, people understanding and knowing who they are, right? What value they have to offer. What is their unique value? What is that signal in all of their personal and professional life, in the arc of their life, in all their expenses, on all their experiences? What is that signal that has driven their success? The mistake that people make, especially, it doesn't matter how accomplished and how skilled you are. The mistake that people make is they point to past accomplishments, like, look, I did that, and I did that, and therefore I will be successful,
Yeah.
right? And what they don't get is leaders, they may not say this, but they know it in their heart, and they're thinking it for sure, is like past successes does not predict future performance, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, you may have accomplished all those things in the past, but maybe you were in the right circumstances, you had the right mentorship, you had the right, maybe you were motivated, you were driven. I don't know where you are right now. I don't know how that is, but do I want to risk putting you in those positions to find out 6 months later that you are not in the right headspace, right? No. And that's why there's always a risk associated with people when they're walking in and speaking with leaders, and leaders are considering them for those important roles. So the way I look at it and the way I help people bridge that gap is to really explore their life, to look at, okay, yes, those are past successes, and you've had past successes both in your personal life and your professional life. But what we're interested in is not in the successes and those experiences. What we're interested in is, what are the signal? Why? What drove those successes? And we look at what their formative experiences were across their life. What were those moments that really formed their internal engine, call it, right? Like, what drove that success? What drove their behaviors? What is that signal? Because that signal, that is enduring, right? That's enduring. That is the thing that continues forward. We need to know what that is. Once we know what that is, that's what we communicate up front. That's what we bring up front. And that, when you communicate it, and because it's the truth, we're not making stuff up. We're exploring actual facts of people's lives because it's the truth. Once you connect with it, once my clients connect with it, there's this thing that happens. And Scott, I kid you not, like it's like watching a miracle, right? But there's this thing that happens with people. It's like this immediate calm that just washes over them, right?
Mm.
If there's one thing that you'll notice if you watch my client success stories, um, two things you're going to hear very consistently, right? Number one is I got to know myself. I met myself. Like I'm like full on conviction. I got to see it, right?
Yep.
And then number two, I'm not worried about job search anymore. I'm not worried about. I'm cool. I'm good. Like I'm good. I know who I am. I know how to connect and I know how to communicate, right? I'm good because they saw that signal. We identified that signal, right?
Yep.
And once you do that, once you have that conviction and you're sitting in front of a leader and that conviction the leader feels, right? The leader feels it. It's, you cannot not feel, I mean, you can feel my conviction, right? A little
Yeah.
bit, right?
Yeah.
But it comes, it again, it comes from this clarity that you have about who you are and the value you have to offer. Once leaders see that and they feel it, you know, it changes. You're different from everyone else. You're different from that person who's coming and trying to sell you their PhDs and their MBAs and what have you. You're somebody who's very different. And so leaders lean in and they're interested and they're curious and they want to know more. And they want essentially what you have. They want that level of conviction in their team, in their organization. So that number one, that is the first thing that bridges the trust gap. Then the
Well, let me
second,
let
the
me
third,
talk about that before you go into the second,
sure.
because I want people to realize like actually how important this is. You know, all the years of me managing
Yeah.
different departments, me owning my own business, hiring people, me being in the online space. Excuse me. I can talk to 5 people for a role, and we all know this instinctively,
Yeah.
right? Like 85% of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah.
So if I'm interviewing 5 people and 4 of them have gone to interview coach and told what to say and how to respond, guess what? All 4 sound the exact same, right? That fifth person that comes in and they are unapologetically themselves,
Yeah.
know what they're good at, they're demonstrating very trustful behavior
Yeah.
and communicating that verbally and non-verbally. You pick those people out, and it's no different than if we sit in a room with 100 people. We all know social cues when you watch somebody stroll through and they're not confident,
Right.
or the person that strolls through and everybody stops and like, who's that person?
Right.
The fact that you develop that inside people so quickly,
Yeah.
dude, that's like a superpower of yours that I absolutely love and adore. And I hope people realize that that's the superpower they have inside them that they don't know how to actually showcase. And you do that with them. It is so transformational for people. And like you said, with the testimonials, and it's one of the most powerful positions you can put yourself in, not only for guiding your career, but personally how it affects people as
Yeah.
well. And I think it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's high praise. I appreciate those kind words. Yeah, it's we're all like you and I both believe, we've I think we've talked about this before, that we're all born with a gift, right? Like we're all born with our own unique gifts. Yeah, but we're not born with a manual, right?
Yep.
And we don't come with, hey, you know what, this is what you're meant to do and what have you, right? And so what we have to do is like we go through life and we have to figure this out for ourselves. But if you're so busy head down doing things and we're not paying attention, if we don't take the time to introspect, then we won't know, right? And
Yep.
then it feels like it feels like you're just running blind.
Yep.
And that's where the depression comes in, that's where the uncertainty comes in, that's where all the that's where all the pain comes in, quite honestly. And for people at this level, when you are, when you're hitting your 40s and you can't seem to land the role that you want, and leaders are like you're really accomplished, you did really well throughout your career, but leaders can't seem to connect with you, and you still have 20 more years of your career left ahead of you, right?
Yep.
That's a real problem. That's a real problem to be in, because if there's people depending on you, if there's family depending on you, if you need to earn an income, then now you're really looking at some hard options of your life, right?
Yep.
And that's if there's one thing I want people to know is like that is not necessary. That is so not necessary. There's it's just it's you're missing out on so much. And the answer, honestly, like, it's cliches that this may sound, the answer is not out there, it's in here.
Yep.
Right? Not me, meaning in them.
Yep. Oh, I know. Yep.
But the answer is within us. And if it's just we have to know how to go in there and pull it out. We have to know how to separate the weed. I mean, separate the data and the signal, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so that's very important.
Yeah, and kind of looking at that piece, like, okay, you help the person develop that. A resume is not going to show that. Going shaking hands isn't going to show that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just one piece of what you do to people. I'm a firm believer to get into certain rooms, you either need to pay to get into that room.
Yeah.
Or you need to be invited into that room. To get invited into that room, you need that person to essentially know who you are. Yeah. And I think it's pretty powerful of what you do in helping people not only find that individual, but to immediately be able to convey to that person, hey, I should be invited into this room. Almost like you've known them your whole life.
Yeah.
So when you go through that process with somebody, like people that haven't had a job in 6 months, like I know one of your clients, he had 1,000 resumes put out there. He had like 10 interviews in the past month, just absolute crickets. And someone that was very successful looking for $200,000 to $400,000 jobs, and he's had that his whole life. And all of a sudden now he's in dire straits on trying to find a job and can't get one. Working with you very quickly, all of a sudden, boom, 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 3 positions automatically open that weren't even posted anywhere, right? It was just through this power of teaching people actually how to get invited into those rooms. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Getting into those rooms is like that. that is not as hard as people think it is. If I'm being honest.
Done correctly.
Done correctly. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not as hard as some people think. Like you don't have to have connections. What you do have to have is, number one, you've got to be, first of all, clarity. You've got to have that clarity, right? You've got to have some understanding of what leaders and organizations need. Some understanding of what's really going on with leaders across the board and organizations across the board. So you have to have some understanding about that. But most importantly, you have to have a way to communicate, right? You have, and there's a strategy, I call it the influence scale. Like you have to know how to communicate with leaders and with people so that you can take somebody from what I call indifference, reading, meaning I don't know who you are and I don't care. So that indifference to that place of conviction where they're like, I cannot see myself going another day without you. Before you leave this office, you have to have an offer, right? I've had leaders who basically have come, this one extreme example. I had one leader who came in my face, like meaning was like in my face saying, you have to come work for me. And this is after 1 hour conversation, just one conversation, 1 hour. And he was in my face basically saying, you have to come work for me. And funny enough, that morning I had another job offered to me from a group of directors and VPs, which is another interesting story that I had that I have. But anyways, I told him, like, I have another offer. I'm gonna have to get back to you. He's like, don't give me that bullshit, right? I'm sorry, but he's like, don't give me that bullshit. Who is it from? Who's the other offer from? Tell me what the job offer is, and what the company is, and I will give you 10 reasons why you shouldn't take it. Right? Now, this is not a standard way of doing hiring. This is not what I experience, right? And it's not what people. I'm like, I can't tell you what my other. He's like, tell me who the other offer is from, and what the job is, and I'll give you 10 reasons why you shouldn't take it. Now I'm like, all right, fine. He was kind of cornering me. So I'm like, yes, okay. So this is the job, this is the company. He's like, okay, here's why you shouldn't take it. Bam, 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 right? And he was so convincing, and I'm like, okay, it totally makes sense. He made the perfect case of why I need to go and work for him. He created a position for me. So the thing is that, number one, to be in that position, to be in the place where you can get into those rooms, right? Authenticity, right? Authenticity. For you to be able to have that authenticity is absolutely key. So that clarity is an important piece. But then the second piece is having the strategy of, how do I take somebody from indifference? How do I get them curious about me? And once I have them curious, how do I develop a connection with them so they actually want me to work with them, right? So I call that desire. And that second, like, from desire, we don't stop there. A lot of the times that desire is like, it comes with a job offer. But I don't like a job offer. What I like is an enthusiastic job offer, right? A job offer is great. An enthusiastic job offer is perfect, right? So when they desire you and they want you, it's like, great, would love to work with you at some point. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. I need you to be convinced that you need me, right? So I take them to that point of conviction. So that's where I get them to this place that they're absolutely convinced they need me, right? And the way we do that is really through what I call, like, through my marketing strategy, I call the lean messaging system, right? It's a very lean way of helping leaders, of essentially taking the entire 30, 40, 50 years of your life and condensing it into a very clear, concise messaging that leaders cannot just know intellectually, but they see it and they feel it.
Yeah.
So they feel your messaging. So it's like somebody, if you're a business owner, so it's somebody coming up to you and saying, hey, like, Scott, understanding your business, that I know what you need. You need somebody who's going to run your operations without you having to think about it, right? And this is why, not saying this is the strategy, but like, this is what this person would do. But basically, through your conversation with them, you get the idea. You hear their story. You get from that person that this is somebody who's driven to help entrepreneurs like yourself be successful, and to really make sure that you never have another headache. Right? They're driven to make sure you never have another day of headache because of operations, that you run seamlessly, that you can trust them to take care of their operations so that you can do what you are here to do, which is share your gift, right? Which is so that you can explore. I mean, you can stretch, you can go and you can push further, you can expand, you can do whatever it is that you want to do, and never have to worry about them, never have to worry about motivating them, never have to worry about encouraging them, never have to worry and wonder what they're doing, right? That person is not just an employee, they're now an asset to you, right?
Yeah. And that's a huge way of putting it. And that's what people are looking for in these roles, right? Like, it's an asset. I'm not just looking for a hire.
Yes.
And, something you brought up of like, hey, you're having that 1 hour conversation and it wasn't an interview. You didn't submit a resume for that. It was a 1 hour conversation with someone, just through you knowing how to position yourself in front of them. Hey, let's have a conversation. And now during that 1 hour conversation, he realized in an hour, I'm not letting you leave the room without you working for my company.
Yes.
And people have to understand that is not a fairy tale. That can be a reality.
Yeah.
When you work with Amir, learn these skills, develop these, put these pieces in place. So now every day you don't wake up, you're sending out 5 hours worth of resume Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Every day, the rest of your family's getting home after school, after work. And you're like, I worked another day in my butt off without making $1 because I doing what I can. And
Right.
that's where the high definition stuff comes into play, right? Rather
Yeah.
than doing a tape recorder. And
Yeah.
so all of your clients learn how to do this. And to be transparent, it's not like someone works with you a week. Next thing you know, they're in a room and having an hour conversation and getting 5 offers in a day, right? Like, let's all be realistic here. You don't have some sort of magical pixie dust. People have to develop this in themselves, build this together with you, and you have a great process and program that does that over a 90-day period. And I think you even talk about how the first like month, stop applying to jobs because you're just burning bridges. Let's
Yes.
get the field sales in place, and then we kind of go. Now, having that conversation with that gentleman, that's a different scenario I want to talk about,
Yeah.
because I see this all the time. You know, you and I know each other in several different masterminds. We actually work together as friends, and you know, you're technically a client as well. And you and I both know that there's certain tiers of individuals in the online space.
Yeah.
And I sent you a voicemail from somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, like he sent you that? Like, you're really well connected. And that's what you're teaching people too, is realizing the people at this higher level,
Yeah.
they're just a person just like you, but they
Yes.
communicate differently. They view things as value differently. They have different fears, all of this. And so you be able to break that barrier and help people get to that above that line of communication,
Yeah.
that you're not an employee. They actually see you as an equal up here. That's where this magic really happens. So
Yes.
talk about that communication level of breaking, you know, up to
Yeah.
that next tier.
Yeah, and this is where I said, can you have to understand what leaders and organizations sort of struggle with across the board, because what you really want to do is you want to see all of them as humans, because they are human. It's just they have a different they have the same kind of, like, they have problems just like you. We all have problems.
Yep.
They just have different quality problems, right? Like in the individual you sent me a voicemail from, and I'm like, I first of all, I'm like, wow, he's a giant in one of these in the online space, and you are connected with him, but you know, he himself, he's going through a massive struggle, or he just went through a massive struggle, right?
Yep.
Pain is pain, problems are problems. It's everywhere, no matter how high you go, right?
Yep.
When I went and I spoke with that gentleman, it was actually at IBM. He was a partner, he was the managing partner at IBM in Calgary here, and we got connected by one of his contacts in one of the consultants in Toronto, where I just had a conversation with that consultant, basically trying to understand what's going on in the oil sands, who's doing what, and you know, like, what are we doing? What is IBM doing? Because that's what I wanted to get into at that time. And so she connected me with him. And then so I just, you know, I walked in, I literally said one thing, and he just went on a tirade and to explain what the situation was. But I guess in that process, he learned, he had an aha moment, and he figured out a solution to offer. And that solution, by the way, turned out to be about a eight-figure revenue stream for IBM. Right. So all from my conversation.
Which is why he didn't want you to walk out of that room without saying yes.
Because he wanted me to be part of that process. He wanted me to be part of that offering, even though I had no experience in that offering. Right. I had no experience in that area. Right. And so that's why he wanted me, is because I didn't walk in like a typical MBA talking and asking strategy and what have you. I didn't talk about myself at all. Right. He hadn't even seen my resume. He offered me the job before he even looked at my resume. And I kind of like kindly, I'm like, here's my resume, just have a look. And so he's like, oh, okay, so you have experience in oil sands. Okay, you're working for me 100%, right? And so that's sort of like how that conversation happened. It's for us to know that, you know what, and what I realized from that conversation is, like, they're human beings, they're people, they're our peers, right? And at the very least, if I'm looking for a place to work, and if I've got my own gifts, my job is to help leaders who are struggling with their pains and their problems, to connect with these leaders, to say, okay, where are these gifts going to help you? How are these gifts? How is this talent? How is this muscle that I bring to the table? Is this going to help you? And once that connection is made, you know, it's off to the races.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, you said it earlier too, and I think again Paul said it, of that immediate trust and understanding, and seeing that individual as the only option, right? Which is why you kind of say, I love the name of your podcast, Necessity versus Commodity. You are the only option. You need to work here. And whether you have experience, which in that role you said you didn't,
Yeah.
but he knew the talents and who you were, and completely trusting you to go, I'm going to put him in there, and it's going to change the game. And again, you're talking 8 figures. right? If they would have put just some Joe Schmo in there, maybe they may seven figures, which is not a big deal, right? But that's a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
No, he
And
would I'm gonna like he would not even had that 8-figure stream because he would not have thought of it.
yeah,
He thought of it because of my conversation,
which is even more powerful. And I'm
which is
glad you clarified that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was an 8-figure stream of income, the revenue that he could immediately be able to get and generate with very little effort and with me on his side. And for him as a partner, like a managing partner, his job is revenue generation, obviously. He's overseeing a consulting office. Um, that's huge. That's huge for him. It's huge for him to be able to go to his regional partner and the heads who run the IBM across the country, or even just IBM overall, and just say, hey, here's an extra 8 figures that we're gonna bring in. So it's a nice little piece that he was able to bring in. But again, it just happened out of this conversation, which is why, again, the way I teach it is, how do you have a conversation that is the highlight of that
Yeah.
individual's day, week, or month, or even year? And for him, it was a massive highlight, right? And so when you do that, that's where you separate yourself from everyone else. That's where you be seen. That's where you're seen as, you know what, you are the only option, because everyone else I see as, and I believe you said it right, I see as a like a load to my cost. What did you say? Like, use the words before. You're a burden on my payroll. Burden on my payroll, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah. We had that discussion because some employers are
yes,
viewed that way, right?
yeah, it's like, you're not a burden to my payroll. You are now a driver for my revenue,
Yep. And I don't need to worry about it.
and I don't need to worry about it. And that is a massive shift to have for a leader. Once they make that switch and connection, why would they not create a position for you? They'd be dumb to not create a position for you.
Yep. Now, I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
And we're kind of running here. We got about 5 or so minutes left. And I guess I kind of want to leave everybody that's watching this with a little something, because if we look back at your career, you started off engineer making 60,000.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be listening to this. They've got to this point like, oh, and I get it. Self-doubt. I'm not good enough. Like all of these fears, all the stuff that every human goes through. Even these leaders have, some of the most powerful leaders have the biggest self-doubt and fears driving them forward, but they act in face of it. Now, the self-doubt, you've worked with tons of different people from 60 years old to just starting careers out,
Yeah.
and everything in between. Nobody that you've run into can't learn, is unable to learn this skill,
No.
or wouldn't, or it wouldn't be a benefit to them. Obviously it would. So in this last few minutes, what do you want to leave with? Because I want anybody watching this to know that everything that we just talked about, you can have this happen in your career by learning this and working with you. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, again, I'm glad I'm having you on, because you are really changing a lot of people's lives out there. So what's something you want to leave people with?
No, you're right. Self-doubt kills. And I get it from people who we live in a world where we trust each other less. And so there are a lot of people out there who promise the world, promise results that are hard to get, and people trust them and they jump in and they don't get those results. And so then obviously it's easy to doubt others, it's easy to doubt yourself. But you're absolutely right. Anyone who's born, who chooses to want to step up to their greatness, has to go through a process. And that is the process that I teach, that I walk through in my program, is really helping people step up into their greatness. But it is a decision, it is a choice that people have to make for themselves. And what I want to leave people with is that, you know what, when you do that, when you step up, you're not just answering the question of why you're here and what you're here to do and what your superpower is. You're not just answering that question. What you're gifting yourself with is abundance, because what you see and what you realize, what I realize, and what my clients realize, one of the reasons why I do this is that the amount of opportunity there is out there for
Mm,
people, regardless of what's happening in the market, the
yeah.
amount of opportunity is immense. I mean, and you having sense of who you are and your clarity is a part of that equation of creating that opportunity. Just like how I did with that with the IBM partners. We
Yeah.
created that opportunity because I understood who I was and I had the conversation the way I did, right? That connected the dots where we discovered an opportunity. That's not unique to me. That happens all the time, right? And so anyone can have this. It's just, do you want it? Do you want it bad enough, right? And
Yeah.
so that's what I would leave people with, is that, you know what, you can have it. It's just a matter of you choosing to want it.
And I just want to add one little piece there, because you said if we look at the environment today,
Yeah.
people often use the excuse everyone's getting laid off. People, their companies aren't hiring. False.
Yeah.
They're cutting, to what you brought up earlier, the people that are a burden on payroll.
Yes.
They're looking for individuals that are solving the massive problem these companies have, because these companies are growing and moving forward with or without you. But they're looking for that person that's going to be a difference maker within their company.
Yeah.
And that opportunity is the best it's ever been. It's kind of like you go back to the Great Depression, more millionaires were made in that time than any other part of the generation, right? Because this is where the top level players show up. And that's what these companies are looking for. And that's why you need to develop this skill. And it does, it opens up the whole world. And I love the fact you said abundance, because it's not just abundance financially, but it's abundance with opportunity. And you have that ability now and that skill to guide the rest of your career until you retire.
Right.
And that is abundance and peace in itself, to have that.
Yeah.
So I can't thank you enough, Amir, for being on today.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I mean, this was great. I really enjoyed this conversation. You and I could talk for hours. Really, really
And
appreciate
we
it.
could, and
Yes.
we probably should have you on again, and talk deeper. And um, I, below this on my YouTube channel, I'm gonna have details about you on there, so people can find you, reach out to you, that sort of thing. Learn more about you, and have that all there. So if anyone's interested, that just go there and you'll find it. Otherwise, you can go find Amir on Facebook. He's on LinkedIn. He is everywhere. I'll
I
have some
can
of
just
those
Google
links
my
in there,
name.
so he'll be good to go.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
You're
Appreciate
very
it.
welcome.